Good evening, everyone, and welcome to your virus report for this Wednesday, the 12th of February, 2020. Now, you know what? We've had a huge jump in the number of cases. Let's put the charts on right here. Take a look. It's jumped to 60,145 from around, I think it was 45,000. So it's like 15,000 new cases today, That's a big jump. But, those cases are all of them have been in China. The big jump in caseload has been in China. I'm going to tell you guys what I'm worried about. What really concerns me is I think this virus has went underground in other countries. And I'll explain to you how it can do that. How this particular virus, unlike other viruses, can go underground. And then it can pop up. Because there's like a 24-day period where you can actually be carrying the virus and you have no symptoms. It's called asymptomatic. Now, imagine this, if you will. If a man is asymptomatic, okay, and he finds his way to another country, and say he's going to a coffee shop, he's going to his hotel and stuff, for this 24-day period. And he's going all around shopping and everything else, but he's not sick, And he might even leave that country. Like he'd go there for a visit, and during that 24-day period, he might even leave that country, he might fly back home or whatever. And he might come in contact with 3, 4, 5 other people that then they become like him, asymptomatic, carrying the disease like him, and they don't even know. Well, he gets back home to his country, and then he gets sick, after the 24-day period's over. Now, these other people in these other countries, the 4 or 5 people that he came in close quarters to, because he didn't know he was sick, they're not sick either. They're going around, and they're spreading it to 4 or 5 other people that they know. None of them are still sick. Okay? Time passes. And there becomes clusters of these people who are asymptomatic, and days are going by and they're not getting sick, and they're coming in contact with other people who are who become asymptomatic too. So it can create like an army of asymptomatic people who are not sick at all, and they're going around spreading the disease to other people. Then all of a sudden, the incubation period starts to wear off for some of them. But they don't know. They just think they have a cold, a head cold. Because most people, that's how the symptoms manifest itself. So still it's unseen, And it's still growing within that area in the communities where the first person came in contact with. Now it might grow to like 100 people, who are mostly asymptomatic. And then finally somebody gets sick, and they get what they think is a head cold. They go to the doctor and he says, you got a head cold, go home, like doctors typically do. And that happens a number of times with a number of these people not being recognized that it's a coronavirus. Then finally you get somebody who becomes, out after about 100 of them actually get sick with it, you finally get a person who manifests enough symptoms where they actually test them and say, hey, you got the coronavirus. Meanwhile, there's an army out there who just think they got a head cold, or they might be completely asymptomatic and not showing any symptoms. This is unusual to this virus. This virus is like that, and it can actually do this. And this is why I say underground. It might be underground right now and going to pop up different places where we don't expect it to pop up when finally somebody gets sick enough to get tested. So right now, maybe there's dozens of them, who knows where. I couldn't tell you where, but maybe there's dozens of them right now that are either asymptomatic or they're presenting symptoms of an ordinary head cold, and they might even get over it and never get tested, And finally somebody gets sick enough where they say, hey, they get tested, and then they say, hey, you know what, we found a case. They think it's one case, but it might actually be 100, because most of the people are asymptomatic or they just presenting symptoms of a head cold. It's when this thing starts to move through the general population and you get thousands of sick, that's when you start to get your deaths, and that's when you start to get your complications that need to go to the emergency room and so on. It's only until it gets to a certain size, the disease gets to a certain size. So the disease can root itself with all these asymptomatic people and all of these people out there who are presenting just a head cold. The disease can actually get well rooted in an area or established in an area before they even know it's there. Finally, somebody gets sick enough where they get tested. So this is what I mean by this disease going underground. It could possibly be underground in a number of places. We don't even know that it's there because nobody's got tested yet. They all just think they have a head cold or they're asymptomatic. And so when you see, by the time you see a number of actual cases, like in Singapore or Hong Kong or in Thailand or in South Korea, there's probably hundreds of other cases that's going unidentified. And this is peculiar to this particular disease. As it starts to move through an area, like China, it starts to overwhelm the healthcare system. They just can't, when it starts to move through masses of people, like if everybody starts catching it, then you get a certain percentage of those people who are going to need special care. They're going to be a bad case, and get the pneumonia part of it, and maybe lesions on their lungs, or really get really terribly ill, when it goes through a large population. But if it's just a few isolated cases here and there, it can go unchecked and unnoticed. And that's the thing peculiar about this particular disease that I see, and I want to point out. This is not over. Like, you might get these reports. They might say, oh, the disease, the numbers are starting to be reduced and so on. This is not over until we finally get rid of the last case of it, and nobody has it. Because if just one person escapes with this, it can go asymptomatic amongst the population, and they don't even know it's out there being spread. That's what makes this disease terribly hard to stop. I'm not going to say it's impossible. I think that China is doing their darn best, and I think they really are slowing it down. I think that caseload in China would be, if they hadn't have done the measures that they done by locking down these cities and keeping everyone inside. I saw a film, there today, and there was some old lady in China. She was walking around out there, and she didn't have her mask on. They were following her around with a drone, screaming at her in Chinese, go inside, get your mask on. And they chased her right inside the house. This is the kind of thing that's going on in China. They're not letting anybody outside. And of course, by doing that, they're cutting off the chain of transmission. And it does have a certain amount of effectiveness. But the thing about it is how long can everybody stay inside their house before they start to run out of food, water, and so on, So, and they have to go back to work because, what would happen to the Chinese economy? So China lets them all go back to work. Okay? Then they're going to spread the disease. They keep them all home. Then the disease stops spreading, but they've got no industry. They've got no economy. So China's trapped here with this. And if this moves into other countries, it's going to trap other countries exactly the same way. But we do see a few things here, looking at this chart, that are encouraging. And the numbers coming from China are not so encouraging. We had a big jump in the numbers today. But we do have encouraging things coming from the United States. Is very encouraging. the fact that we only have 13 cases in the United States, and it hasn't been rising. It hasn't been rising for a number of days now, and you know the chain of people contracting the disease it'll die out unless it can move. Unless the disease can find new hosts, the disease will die out. And in the United States now, a number of days have went by with no new hosts, and it's looking good. It's looking really good. There are only 13 cases in the United States, and if they can continue with this, the United States might eradicate it from the United States if they can continue with this. They have to remain very vigilant with this disease. This is a frightful disease. Canada's doing good too with only 7 cases. The United Kingdom's doing pretty good with only 9 cases. I notice the caseload in the United Kingdom has not been going up quickly. That's very good news. France is at 11. You know, so these other countries, like look at Italy, 3. These other countries are doing pretty good so far, keeping this virus out. You know, not letting it get a toehold. But it's starting to get a toehold in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Thailand, and South Korea, and Japan. It's trying to get a toehold in Japan, too. So the best policy for a country is to not let this virus get in your country, first off. And if it does get in, track down each and every person who's had contact with each and every person and try to get it rooted out before it actually gets a toehold. You don't want to let it get a toehold like it's got on China, because you see what it's doing to China. You see what it's doing to their economy. You see what it's doing to their people, the misery. It's worth every effort in the world to keep this virus out. It's worth every effort in the world. Listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.